But let me turn to this evening. If you'd like to find out more about Action for Happiness, our details are here. But this evening is all about happiness at work, and we're absolutely delighted to have Henry Stewart here. If you haven't had a chance to look at the book and the contents online already, and you haven't bought a book already, then please do check this out. I think what we're going to hear tonight is fundamental to a rethink, a call for change in our organisations and the way we treat people. Henry has set up a company called Happy, which I'm sure he'll tell you more about, but from his own experience of how not to run happy companies, has created one that is based absolutely on the principles you're going to hear about this evening. So this is not research, it's not hearsay, it's something that's been lived and breathed in an organisation that's then gone on to win awards for great customer service, awards for the best places to work. So Henry's book, I wanted to read you this one quote that was sent in connection with Henry's book, which I think is setting the scene nicely for this evening. This person had written, "I feel how I imagine people must feel when they find religion," in the context of Henry's work on happiness at work. So please join me in welcoming Henry and listening to his views on how to create happier workplaces. Thanks very much. There we go, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mark. I again would like to particularly thank Cass Business School for their huge generosity and great organisation in hosting this, and for Mark and Action for Happiness in organising this. I think it's one of the most important pieces of work that's going on at the moment in terms of working out how we create a happier society. I'd like to thank all of you for coming, and in particular my family and my parents who've come from Birmingham, and who are a foundation of all of this, because they taught me that you could be principled in work, whatever you did. So anyway, who knows about, I presume you've all heard of Happy. Do you all know Happy? Hands up if you know Happy. Okay. Normally at business conferences when I'm speaking, that's about one hand. But Happy, in case you don't know, we started off training in IT, making learning about computers fun and involving, and we've moved on to training people to create happy workplaces. And as Mark said, we've won 1 or 2 awards along the way. We were, for 5 years, in the top 20 best workplaces in the UK. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is some of the ideas that we, from practical experience, I know create happy workplaces. And we've also had the good fortune to meet with all the other top workplaces and get all the best ideas from people like Microsoft, Google, Gore, and those kinds of people. So we nick those ideas wherever possible, and I want to encourage you all to nick any ideas from Happy that you can. So let me start off with our core principle. People work best when they feel good about themselves. Hands up if you'd agree with that. Good, good. I like this audience. It's good. Okay. In that case, what should the main principle of management be, if that is true? What should be the focus of management? Anyone? Encouragement, praise, making people feel good. Okay. Hands up, those of you who work in organisations where the main focus of management is to make people feel good. Oh, we've got a few. Yes, good. Acting for Happiness have put their hands up. Hopefully yeah, good. People from Happy have put their hands up. That's good too. Now, I'm serious about this. You might, it sounds a bit jokey, but I'm actually very serious about this. And I want to tell you about a piece of research done by Nando's. How many of you know Nando's? Everyone, yeah? You've eaten their chicken restaurant based all over the country. They wanted to find out why it was that some of their branches grew and were very profitable and some of them didn't. So they did a huge piece of research to correlate all sorts of factors, location, qualifications, all sorts of things. And they came up with one factor, above all, that correlated most closely with commercial success. Any guesses what that was? There's a slight clue at the back. It was how happy staff said they were in their annual survey. That was the closest correlation. So what was interesting was what they then did was they changed the manager's bonus system. So that instead of bonusing managers on sales and profit, which is what they still wanted, 50% of managers' bonuses became based solely on how happy staff said they were in the annual survey. Because they realised that's how you got the sales and profits. So there's going to be a bit of interaction in this session. You're going to get a chance to talk and discuss. So I want you to turn to your neighbour and answer the question, how would your organisation be different if that was the main focus of management, making people feel good? And it isn't, would this be a good idea? I'm not wanting you to discuss that at this point. I'm asking, how would your organisation be different if that was the main focus? 2 minutes on that. Any very short thoughts? How would your workplace be different if that was your main focus? Anyway. Somebody shout out?
I wouldn't be doing much at school because my manager would say, "You're wasted in that position."
Excellent. Any others?
Better staff retention.
Better staff retention? Anyone else?
I'd get rid of the grumpy chief exec. That's me, by the way.
Okay, anyone else?
Profit.
More profit.
Profit because people would want to come to work.
People would want to come to work, so more profit. Any others?
Less stress.
Less stress, more innovation.
Lower security.
We'd have a clearer vision of where we can go.
Clearer vision. How many people think your organisation would be more effective if that was the case? Okay. So how many people feel you can do that in your organisation? Make that the main focus. How grumpy chief executive? That might sound a bit anecdotal, Nando's, and just had some interesting thoughts about it. Does it stand up to hard analysis? Well, that's an interesting question because there's a guy called Alex Edmonds at Wharton Business School in the States who decided to analyse that. Because the Best Place to Work awards have been going for about 25 years now. So he asked the question, what would happen if you went back and looked at the stock market, and what if you invested each year in the 100 best places to work and compared that to investing in the stock market? Okay, and tracked that over 25 years, did incredibly thorough economic analysis on it, taking all other factors out of it. And what he found was there was what he said was a 4, which I don't remember saying, a 4 alpha differential of 3.5%. Anybody know what a 4 alpha?
No.
Oh, you do? Oh, good. I have no idea, but anyway, I tried to.
It shows you are unlikely to get it by chance if you just pick the coin.
Okay, something you won't get by chance. So basically, it's the difference between investing in the stock market and investing in the best workplaces was 3.5% a year. Now, that's pretty good for alpha thing?
Yeah.
What it means is that if you'd invested your pension over the 25 years in that, and if in the stock market would have got £100,000, invested in the happiest workplaces, it would have got £230,000 by the end of that period. That's the financial benefit of happy workplaces. And even, I don't know if we've got any financial directors here. Any financial directors? No? If we had, I feel there is now a pretty convincing case that it absolutely makes business sense. Yeah? So let's think about when did we work at our best. I want you to have just 1 minute with your neighbour. I want you to come up with the occasion when you absolutely worked at your best. I know we all work hard all the time, we all do great work all the time, but particular time you were incredibly productive, you were motivated. When was it and what was it about it? 1 minute chatting to the other neighbour. Okay, so has everybody got in mind a particular personal occasion when you were absolutely working at your best? Yeah? So let me ask you some questions about that. How many was the time when you were particularly well paid? Oh, 1, 2, maybe 1.5, maybe? Okay, how many was the time when communication from management was particularly strong? Nobody? Normally that gets a few. That normally gets a third. You've got about 10% this time. For how many was the time when you were challenged? That's about 3/4, maybe even more, 80%. How many was the time when you were trusted and given freedom to do it your way? Okay, I think that's definitely 90%. And I get this very consistently, that if you want to look at when people worked at their best, it's not about, if you ask people first what makes great management, they will generally talk about it's communication, it's vision, it's that kind of thing, but very rarely about the trust bit. Yeah. And what actually makes great management, because what makes great management is what enables people to work at their best. And what that is about is trust, freedom, and support. Yeah? Because great management for me is very much about getting out of the way. Now, if it's about, what I often get people saying when I talk about it being about trust and freedom, they say, yes, but it's important to have those things like communication and those kinds of things, yeah? So let me just explain it by going back to Maslow. Who remembers Maslow? Everyone remembers Maslow? What was at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Survival, basic needs. What was at the top? I think you read a different version to me, but as most of you said, it was self-actualization. Yeah. So we need these. These are vital to enable. When we haven't got those are what motivate us, aren't they? Being able to get a meal, being able to have safety, a bed to sleep in. But once we've got those, more of those don't motivate us. Yeah. What actually motivates us then is belonging, self-esteem, and this idea of being in command of our lives. So I have a management alternative of that, which I'm afraid doesn't have any sex in it, but it's this. That these are necessary. We need to have communication. We kind of need to be paid well, decently. But that isn't what motivates us, despite what the city does and believes. That isn't what motivates us to great achievement. What motivates us are the top part: support, challenge, freedom and trust. That's what I've found in all the people I've asked and all the people we've dealt with. So, if you look at British organisations, or most of the world probably, which end of that pyramid do most companies focus on, the bottom or the top? The bottom. Which do you think the very best organisations, the very best workplaces focus on? Absolutely. And that's the change that I want us to think about today. How we shift the organisations we work in from focusing on those kind of basic things to really giving people that freedom. Which raises a whole question about what management is about. And as I say, I believe management is about getting out of the way. And there's a trap of what I call the myth of the clever manager. Yeah? How many of you saw a program called Boss Swap about 8 years ago? Anybody see it? Somebody, somewhere. One person, and two people in the audience. You've seen Wife Swap, yeah? It's a bit like that, except not quite as exciting. But two managers swapped companies and ran the other company. Yeah? There were 3 programs, so 6 swaps. It never ran again, and if you saw what happened in those companies, you might understand. Because what those managers did was they walked into companies they'd never been in sectors they had no experience of, and started telling people what to do. Yeah? Because their whole self-image as managers was that they were a manager because they were cleverer. They knew better how to do things. And their whole justification had to be for themselves in a new organisation was they had to make better decisions. One manager, one of the 6, was different. They walked into the organisation and they walked around the shop floor asking people, what do you need? What's getting in your way? What will enable you to do better? And that was the only organisation of the 6 that became more effective over the 2 weeks of the programme. So we've got to switch managers out of that way of thinking into thinking of themselves not there not in the old command and control, but there to support and give that freedom. So, if management is about getting out of the way, let me look practically at what that could mean. How many of you are managers first? Okay, fair number. How many of you who are managers, have been managers, get people to come up with a solution to a problem or come up with a new plan and then report back to you? How many people do that? Okay. Okay, what I want to suggest to you is that next time you say, come up with the plan and don't show it to me. Okay? Approve the idea before they've thought of it. The concept is called pre-approval. Oh, sorry, that's coming later. The concept is pre-approval, and the idea is that you as a manager don't approve it. Yeah? To give an idea of this, a trainer recently came to me and told me this. I love the 3 things that have changed in the way you set up training at Happy. You know, they make it so much easier for me and easier for our students. And I looked at the 3 things, and the first thing that struck me was I didn't know that happened. Yeah? Because they hadn't come across my desk for approval. The second thing I noticed was if they had come across my desk for approval, I'd have rejected 2 of them. Because, you know, I set up how we do things at Happy. I used my best thinking, you know. Those were clever ways of doing things. I, as a manager, am a complete block on change. But, of course, if it comes across my desk, you can't ignore it, can you? You know, if it comes across your desk, you start, you know, making helpful suggestions. How many people have had their best ideas improved by their manager? Been a good experience? So how you avoid that is by pre-approval. This picture is our cafe at Happy, and it's one of the things that we pre-approved. Some people wanted to improve the cafe. I don't know if they're here. Are they outside, Debbie and Matt? Okay. That they wanted to change things, so we agreed a budget. We agreed, you know, general idea that this is the kind of brand of Happy is bright. And the first time I saw it was when I walked in the room, when I walked in the cafe the day after they'd done it. So, quick chat again with somebody else, maybe the person behind you this time, or someone near you, whatever. What would it be like to pre-approve, to say, here's the parameters, here's the budget, you go away and come up with a solution, and don't show it to me. Just implement it. A couple of minutes on that. What would it be like to pre-approve? What would it be like to pre-approve it? Any immediate thoughts? Scary. Oh. Liberating. Any others? Get a lot more free time. Absolutely. Any others? Responsibility.
Responsibility of delegation.
Yeah. Responsibility delegation. Absolutely. And let me pick up on the more free time, because there's an example where we did this. We had a charity we were working with. They wanted us to come in and find out why the people were so miserable. Okay. We'll come and do that for you if you like, by the way. And we talked to them, and one of the reasons they were so miserable was because they had anything they did, anything they wrote, went up through 3 levels of approval. Yeah? One of the people actually said they deliberately put things that were wrong in their press releases just to see if anybody would spot it. Because it wasn't their responsibility what went out. But we talked to the senior managers, and they said, oh, yes, but we can't let them write whatever they like. The whole authority and responsibility, you know, image of our organisation depends on what goes out. We have to approve it. Okay? So you've got a real reason for discontent. You've got a real reason they do this. What's the solution? Anybody?
Specific guidelines?
Specific guidelines, is it? Yeah?
Shared agendas?
Shared agendas, yeah. I mean, that's the agenda, yeah.
Find somebody you trust to actually speak for the organisation.
Yeah, find someone you trust.
Just approve 90% of them unless they're really stupid.
Sorry, say that
Just
again.
approve most of them unless they're really stupid.
Approve 90% of them unless they're stupid, you say. Okay, that's the kind of thing. The question we ask: what is it that people 3 levels up know that the frontline staff don't? Work that out. Train those people in that. Approve. You can test them as well if you like. You know, just to make sure. Certify them, and then say they can go and do those press releases. The effect was transformative. The organisation was Amnesty, and a lot of it was about death sentences. And if you don't get the press release out the same day, it could have happened, because in China it happens the next day. But what was most interesting was going back to the chief exec 10 years later when I wrote the book, the stories in the book, and asking if it worked. And he said, yes, but the biggest effect, and this comes back to your comment, was on the managers. Because before they'd literally been spending half their time checking what everybody else was doing. So everything was being done twice. Suddenly, they were freed up to do their actual job of supporting their people and doing the strategy. And they still got the assurances because they knew the people were doing the kind of stuff they asked for. You know, within the guidelines, within the training and all that kind of thing. So, let me go back to the elusive picture before. This is Marion Janna, who is here somewhere. So, Buddy's here as well, actually. Okay, and Buddy's here as well, yes. Okay, this is a story that's in the book, and it's a remarkable story of what happens if you take a different approach to change and to management. In fact, Marion isn't a manager. What she decided was she wanted to change the way acute mental health wards were run in this country. Okay. Now stop for a moment and think, what would be, let's say the government decided to do that. What would they do? Any thoughts? How would they approach it? They might throw some money at it. If that's, well, not this government, I think, but anything else? They talk about it for the next 10 years. What was that? Consultation paper. And they'd probably then set down, well, first of all, they'd probably tell the sector how crap they were, yeah? How lots of people probably needed to be sacked. This is the kind of approach that they use in education, certainly. And then they set a whole set of ways everybody had to do, and then set absolute targets they had to do. And it would be really, and then they'd ask, why aren't people motivated by this? Why are they resisting change? Yeah? What Marion did, and she wasn't a manager, she had actually never worked in the mental health sector. She'd been a service user of it. But she saw there was potential for change. So she actually came up with a booklet of 75 ideas. No compulsion, just lots of ideas. She came up with lots of examples of mental health wards that were doing it really well. I.e., she wanted to make people feel good, because people are more open to change if they feel good. She put this out in an entirely supportive way, and people in the sector started adopting this and started spreading their own ideas. It has got to the point now where over 90% of mental health wards are a member of her campaign, which is called Star Wards. If you go into a mental health ward now, you'll find it very different to what it was 5 years ago. And she actually was awarded an OBE for her work. She's left, actually, but so I could praise her to the high heavens now. But that, for me, is a remarkable story of the opposite of the top-down management approach, the enabling approach. Because people often are thought to resist change. They don't resist change, they resist being changed. If you involve them in change, they very much can take part and can be part of that. Yeah? Another story, actually, I'll tell Dee's story, if I can do, about making people feel good. Dee's story was about a debt he was trying to collect. This works, this philosophy helps your people to work better, it helps all your relationships. He had a debt, and if I'm right, the last negotiation on the debt had ended in the words, see you in court. Yeah? It wasn't going particularly well. And then he reflected, I think read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which he's in an office and that was sitting on the shelves. And he thought, okay, he knew this person had been going through a bad time. He knew he had family illness, so he rang him and didn't discuss the debt at all. He showed concern, asked him about his family, had a really good talk. No mention of the debt. 2 days later, there was a cheque in the post. Yeah, the guy had paid, I think, a part of the debt, and 2 weeks later paid the whole debt. Yeah? Because if you focus on relationships and making people feel good, you get a completely different result. Yeah? So 1 more minute with your neighbour, where could you make someone feel good to improve the way your organisation or your relationship with your supplier works? 1 minute on that one. Okay, how many people think they can make a difference in some part of the organisation based on that simple philosophy of making people feel good? Good. The others of you try. See what happens. I mean, it's very much the action for happiness philosophy, isn't it? That you can personally make a difference. You know, obviously, if we can get the head of the organisation on board in transforming the way management works, that could make a big difference. But each of us can make some difference. So let me kind of put this into a kind of bit of a model, because some people at this point often feel this is sounding a bit hippie-ish. Yeah? Don't know. You probably all are a bit hippie-ish here, so it doesn't matter. But, I did have one friend who was given a job with a 3-word job description, which was, do cool stuff. That was it. That was, as you might guess, an internet company in the last boom, and I'm not sure it's still around, actually, but because that isn't what we're advocating. Most of us want to know that there want some guidelines. Let me ask a question, actually. If you're given 3 choices, be told what to do, be given complete freedom, or given freedom within guidelines? I'm going to ask you which of those three you would want. So how many like being told what to do? Hands up, anybody? Okay. How many like complete freedom? Okay. 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a slightly higher proportion than normal. How many like freedom within guidelines? Okay, that's about 80%. When I've done this in, in opinion poll format, we generally get 4% want to be told what to do, 6% like complete freedom, and 90% want freedom within guidelines. And that's what we get in our staff surveys. That, yes, tell us what you want, give us the guidelines, give us the, work with us on what the actual framework is, but give us freedom, please, to do what we want. So let me just tell you the happy story to put this in perspective, because I started out in my back room in Hackney 20 years ago, starting to do IT training. And I have to confess, I was a bit full of myself. I thought my big challenge would be to find other people as good at it as me. I was a little lacking in the humility. So when I started recruiting people, I would make detailed notes through the day of what they did right and what they did wrong. And then at the end of the day, I'd sit down with them and feed it back. How do you think that went down? Lead balloon is normally what comes up. But I was actually falling into a couple of quite common management traps. How many of you have known a manager who wanted people to do it exactly the way they did? Yeah? And one of the things about that, when you're trying to create a clone, you can only have a second best clone. The best they can be is the same as you. And the other trap is to think that if you do this, 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 and this, you'll always get this result. That might work in manufacturing. It doesn't generally work with people, because people are different. But at the same time, I didn't want to say to people, train how you like. Because how many of you have been on IT training in the last few years? Hands up. Keep your hands up if you found it a fun and involving experience. Okay, 1, 2. You didn't come to happy, did you? You did, good. The standard way of training at the time, and still a bit at the moment, was to stick a techie in front of the class and they tell you which button to press. Have you had that sort of training? It's not very engaging. So we didn't want to say, well, do whatever you want, but we didn't want to say, do this, this, this. So we came up with the job ownership framework, which was a set of principles, which can be summed up as don't tell when you can ask. Yeah? Which is still the core basis of our training, and probably of our management as well. And a set of targets based around being confident and capable in the software. Another element of it is support. Is support the same as management? Some people might say it's the same as good management, but the key here is the support is what this person wants. And it might be they go to the manager, it might be they go to a colleague, it might go to all sorts of places. And the other key element is feedback. How often do most of us get feedback in our jobs? Once a year, somebody said? Any advance on that?
You've done something wrong.
When you've done something wrong? Most people report that they get feedback based at their appraisal. Every 6 months or every year. Yeah? And for me, that's a bit like, say you're playing a game of football, you kick a goal, and you find out whether you scored 6 months later. In fact, you find out 6 months later whether your manager thought you were going to score. Yeah? Or thought you scored. Which wouldn't do much for improvement, would it? So, where should the feedback come from? The manager or someone else? Where should it come from? Everyone, particularly the customers, whether internal or external customers. Should it go to the manager or should it be the person themselves that gets it directly? Absolutely, to be fully owned, it's not the manager's interpretation. So let's just quickly look at this model. Who should decide the principles, the organisation or the individual? Everyone, possibly, yeah. Although, there is a case for the organisation. Let's go back to my amnesty case. Let's say you start work there and you say, well, I quite believe in the death penalty. Tough. You've got to accept the principles of the organisation. Hopefully they'll develop over time with you. Targets. Who should set the targets, the individual or the manager? A few people saying managers, a few people saying together. Let me ask you a couple of questions. According to all research, who sets the tougher targets, the individual or the manager? The individual, according to research, sets tougher targets. When do you think they're more likely to be achieved? When the individual sets them or when the manager sets them? So who should set the targets? Absolutely. And one of our clients recently decided to do this with their salespeople, gave them all a 2-day training course on how to set targets and how to do this kind of thing, and ended up with all of them setting targets above where he would have set them. And the last time I talked to him, they were well on the way to achieving them. So, shall I have another interaction? No, let's carry on. The book has 10 key principles, and I think I'm going to manage to cover about 4 or 5, but all the rest are in there. So I'm going to quickly skip the next one, which was intriguing for you. You can ask about that later if you want. But let me come on to the most radical belief that we have at Happy. We believe that you should choose who manages people based on how good they are at managing people. It won't catch on, he says. Because what have people normally chosen to manage on the basis of? Their technical ability. And anything else? How long have they been there? So if you've got a programmer who's been there for 10 years, what's going to happen to them? They'll make them a manager because the fact they're great at coding is sure to mean they're great at nurturing and supporting people. Yeah? But it happens throughout. It's not just programmers. How many of you have had managers like that who are great at the technical but not good? Yeah? Quite a lot of you. Yeah? Okay, because for me, if you look at the roles of management, let's say strategy, decision-making, supporting, challenging, nurturing. Is that a fair summary of the roles, the skill sets? What's odd about that combination? Absolutely. We have here 2 roles. We have role A, strategy and decision making. We have role B, supporting, challenging and coaching. I love it when people say exactly what I need for the next slide. And which one, role A or role B, do people tend to get promoted on? A. Which one, if we really believe people are our greatest asset, is crucially important? But it's okay, isn't it? We can promote people on that and train them in that because it's really easy to learn how to do role B, isn't it? Yeah? So that, for me, is the fault line at the heart of management. The moment you split those 2 roles, a lot becomes possible. And that's what we do at Happy. We have one set of people who do strategy and decision making, and another set who do supporting, challenging and coaching. And we don't expect the same people to necessarily do the same thing. Yeah? So the result of that is a lot becomes easier. Let's say you have somebody comes to you and says, I love my job, I love the people I work with, I'm even happy with what I'm being paid, but I can't stand my manager. Have you been that person? How many people have been that person? Yeah? What happened next? You what? You moved into HR, okay. What often happens is people leave, yeah? People leave. You lose people because of that. If somebody says that at Happy, we say, fine, who would you like instead? We let people choose their manager. Okay? Because what would make more sense than the person who is to be managed, is to be supported, is to be challenged, choosing the person who's best to do that? How many of you would choose someone different? I have to be careful if you're with your manager here, but how many people would choose someone different if you could choose your manager? Survey last month found that 47% would choose someone different if they could choose their manager. Another survey found about 45% of young workers would take a pay cut to have a different manager. Because what we have is a lot of people in posts, for all the best will in the world, who simply, it isn't their strength. And how many of you know the Strength Finder analysis? Oh, a fair few. Good. Okay, this is the concept which is crucial to creating happy workplaces, that let's say you go to your appraisal and you come up with these are what you're great at, these are what you're not so good at. What's normally the next step? Work on the things you're not so good at. Yeah? What would be an alternative? work on the strengths. Yeah? Spend your time doing what you're great at. And I know a couple of people, Dom, you put that, you used that at Rackspace? And Pier 1, what was the effect?
Well, the thing is, you get people to come to work and do what they're best at every day. Frankly, they'll be good at it. I don't need to manage them, and that makes two of us very happy.
Absolutely. Put very well, I thought there, yes. Okay, and so some people's strength isn't management. Yeah? Some people, if I have an order, well, let's try this with the managers here. How many of you have managers that love managing people? It's what motivates you, what gets you up in the morning. There's normally quite a few. Hands up. How many would rather not be doing the managing people bit? Okay, even in this audience, there's a few of those. Okay. So imagine you could set up the organisation so that was possible, so that those people didn't get to manage people. So let me give you a scenario we worked with. A company where the marketing director was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely the organisation wanted to keep her, but the effect on her staff was that half of them left every year. The company wanted to get away from that, so quick chat with your neighbour again. What's the solution? How do you keep the marketing director but motivate the staff? Just a minute on this one because this is an easy one. Okay? I'm going to tell you what we did, and I'm willing to bet a fair few of you have come up with the same solution. We took the marketing director and she became marketing consultant, still on the staff, fully paid, same pay. And we found somebody in the organisation who was good with people and trained them, and they became the manager of the department. How many people came up with a roughly similar solution to that? Okay. Now keep your hands up if you could do it in your organisation. Okay, good. Good. That's a fair number. Could. Okay. It simply makes sense. Guess who was happiest at that solution? The marketing director. A lot of people often ask, but what about the poor manager who gets to lose their position as manager? It's absolutely win-win because what she knows she's great at is marketing, what she loves doing is marketing. These ideas and the ideas in the book are kind of, there's a question that Julian Birkenshaw asked. Is Julian here? Actually, no? Okay. He's written the foreword on the book, which he asks, what would management be like if it was decided by the people who are managed? Yeah? And it would probably be a lot more effective, but it would be based around these kinds of ideas. And people expect a lot more at work now. There's a very interesting opinion poll we're involved in last month. We asked people, do you simply, how many of you come to work to pay the bills? Just to pay the bills. The alternatives were, somebody said yes, they do. Is it very important to be happy at work? Is it quite important to be happy at work, or do you just come to work to pay the bills? What percentage do you think come to work just to pay the bills? Somebody guesses, shout out. 20% over there? 60%? 70%? 2%. Only 2% of respondents. This is office jobs. And it'd be interesting to know whether it's different from the old manufacturing plants of 50 years ago, but only 2% come to work purely to pay the bills. 90% say it's either very important or quite important to be happy at work. I can't remember what the other 8% were, but they said something else. But that's what people expect now. And as Mark showed earlier, half the population are not happy at work. Half the population, and as a result, are not going to be as effective, as productive as they would be otherwise. So, this book, this event, this Alliance with Action for Happiness is about a campaign, a call for a move to happier workplaces, because they're not just better for the people who work in them, they're also better for the organisations. The financial proof is there, the evidence is there, it's very clear. So just before I close, I'm going to just ask you to again talk to your neighbour, because I want you to want to know any thoughts as a result of this. So one simple question, one thing I like about these ideas. Grab some, if it's possible to talk to somebody you haven't talked to, but otherwise talk to somebody you have. 1 minute on that one. Next question. Having thought about one thing you like, one thing you will do. Because as I say, this isn't just about selling the book, it's about changing the workplace. So what will you do with these ideas back at your workplace? Carry on the discussion. How many people came up with at least one thing they'll do in their organisation this week with these ideas? Yeah. Hopefully, some of you, yes? Good. Okay, I'll come to a close there, but with that thought that we can change the way we work. We can create more effective organisations. And I would urge you to join this and create those organisations. I'm Henry, I'm happy, I hope you are too.